everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host, Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
You know, it definitely hasn't been a while, but I'm feeling maraudy lately. What about you?
Yes, sorry about that, everybody. We have had one, two, three, I don't know, half a dozen or so life events happen over the past several weeks that kept us busy. Apologies for that, but we are back as always. We're still here. We still love Old World, and let's talk about these amazing new Marauder announcements. Oh my goodness, because it's not just the Marauder models, Evan. It's a whole bunch more, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they've really started to actually take the plunge into redefining the world building for the chaos that they had promised kind of to do in the Arcane Journal, the first one that came out, and in the core rulebook. That Warriors of Chaos right now are a divided tribe where many tribes where they don't really worship Khorne or Nurgle or Tzeentch. They have kind of proxy gods that they're following, and they're unaware that they have fallen into this evil path, and that's kind of a really
Yeah.
interesting concept.
Yeah, it's super cool. And to your point, Evan, I think they've learned some lessons. I think that they've taken from 40K or some of the other game systems where that the universe or the lore or the canon was fairly static for about 30 years, right? It really didn't change or evolve, right? Now, of course, we know about the end times, but let's ignore that because that never happened. And as far as I'm concerned, it's never going to happen again. And such. So I think to your point, they are taking this opportunity to, hey, this game should move forward, this narrative should move forward, and they are taking that opportunity to refresh the ranges, not just the models but also to refresh the canon, the lore, and not just refresh it but to expand it, right? Go into areas that were never explored before while they're releasing these amazing new models. And it's really exciting to see these very talented narrative people who are writing these. I don't know if it's just JTY and the other designers, or they're
Yeah.
just focused on the rules, or who's writing the lore. I'm not sure if that's a separate team, but they're doing an amazing job, and they're really fleshing out areas that they never really explored before.
Yeah, and so right now they're talking about the Shadowlands. So we have this great map here. So for people who are wondering, like we've got the Chaos Waste all the way up in the north, right? That is very
So
clearly
cool.
the land of mystery. Like time moves in different ways. People might know from the Gotrek and Felix books when they went up to the place that sounds exactly like Casa Doom, but it's not. But the Shadowlands are everything below that, so Norsca and in the kind of the
Hmm.
borders of Kislev. So these are the boundary areas between where the forces of chaos and the influence of chaos isn't fully there, but it is partially corrupting the land. And the Shadowlands are, like you can still grow crops. There's still human civilizations that aren't necessarily evil, but they do have
Hmm.
that corruption as well.
Yeah, and for the most part, for many a very long time, this map was kind of like anything north of the Empire was just kind of blank. It was just
Yeah.
kind of empty, just kind of like, yeah, chaos is up there. So now they're really fleshing out that area more, and certainly they did to a degree in like the Total War series, right? But now we're seeing that fleshed out further in the actual game itself of the old world, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and they're also pointing out here they're not trying to just represent the Norskins, because many people might think that all Marauder tribes are Norscan. No, Norsca is this kind of peninsula here, but the Kurgan are off to the east, and I believe it's the Hung or the Hmong or the Hung are off to the west in
I'm not sure.
yeah, I don't think they are going to be focusing too much on Nagaroth at the moment, but when we get over that, that'll be there. But they are trying to reference that, hey, the Kurgan tribes, which are kind of in the steppe lands and attacking Cathay, which is something we found out about recently
Hmm.
when they announced the latest Cathay Arcane Journal. That yeah, there are marauders that are going to be attacking Cathay as well, and they're going to be slightly different. And so one of the ways you could represent them is to have these different tribal affiliations. And so when they get into what's in this book and what's going to be coming up from Marauders, it's way more customizable than it was before.
Yeah, it's really cool that they're fleshing that out. So it's not just, hey, there's just a bunch of barbarians, right? They're actually multiple different cultures, multiple different tribes, multiple different peoples, right? So there's a reason why they are doing different things. They might look slightly differently. There's a reason or a theme that you might want to customize your army for, which is awesome, right? Just like the Empire, right? The Empire is not just one set of people, right? It's actually a whole bunch of city states within the empire with lots of different cultures and things. And they're really trying to represent that here with the Marauders, that no, actually, it is an amalgamation of multiple cultures up there.
Yeah, so what they're saying here is that, the power of chaos ebbs and flows. Right now, it's on the more weaker side. And because of this, you're not going to see as many frenzied berserkers to Khorne or plague knights of Nurgle. Those are actually relatively rare. Far more
Hmm.
common are marauder tribes that worship chaos undivided. and they have almost like these proxy gods that they worship the real chaos gods through. And as we know from the lore, like the chaos gods are able to absorb the worship and the elements of their followers, even if it's not using the direct name of the god in their sacrifice. So if they said the bloodied hound here, like we're seeing, or the carrion crow, that's Khorne and Nurgle, but the worshippers of these animist deities, they don't really know that, and it's kind of a secondary, tertiary, like
Yeah.
it's almost like money laundering.
Yeah, almost to a degree. And I think as long, right, the lore has been, as long as the emotions, or if you will, or the aspect that chaos god focuses on, if that's being channeled intentionally through, sometimes unintentionally through the worshippers, or even the not worshippers sometimes, that will definitely empower the chaos god time. But I think another interesting thing is I love how they it out with some different animal deities and such, but they've also implied that there are more, right? And so this is really is awesome for the hobbyist out there. Like, hey, maybe you want to represent Khorne, maybe not with the bloodied hound, maybe you want to represent it with something else, maybe a rhino, right? Or maybe a berserk warthog or something and such. So just showing that they have these different ways that they worship the chaos gods, I think is really awesome for the creativity and the hobbyists out there who really want to explore that and do different things.
It's also a little bit easier for me to imagine that these kinds of groups might all be teamed up and fighting together when they're worshiping the Bloodied Hound or the Slithering Serpent. It evokes to me far more of a polytheism tribe, like in the same way that you might have Vikings, where they might worship Odin and Thor and Loki. You now have Bloody Town, Carrion Crow. Whereas in the past, having like, okay, I've got a bunch of Mark of Khorne berserkers, and then I've got some Mark of Nurgle Chaos Knights, and everyone's just all happy and hanging out. It doesn't really seem like that quite works in my mind. Like I've always found that the Mark of Chaos system on the units in the Warriors Chaos Army was a little bit too like you just get to pick random stuff and don't have to worry about why it makes any sense.
Pretty rigid, pretty binary. Yeah, they're definitely implying here that no, this is a much more open system intentionally, and thematically, it's much more open. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I've harried on about many times before, is that Chaos, particularly in this edition, has so many interesting weapons, bonuses, and abilities that seem like they should be locked to certain types of followers, and they aren't. They're totally open. Like you can have the Enchanting Aura bonus, which is a Slaneshi type, coded upgrade, and you can just be Mark and Earl, and you can have that. It's like, go for it, man. And it's like, I don't really get, it doesn't really make sense to me. But now that they've kind of diverged from that, and we're kind of getting more away from it, it starts to make more sense when it's being more blurred this way.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, amazing. So they're trying to represent the great powers and the chaos in a different way, right? So it's more like the Worlds of Legends era that's a bit less end of the universe, there's not Valkyria the Bloody leading a Khorne army down from the north. It's way more these Marauder tribes that are more of a hodgepodge, and that's really interesting. And I hope we're going to see the rules that people actually play with on the table kind of match that idea.
Yeah, I think they're going to expand that honestly more, and I think that's one thing that's going through my mind, and we'll find out in the future. Like honestly, thinking about later this edition, is this wave 1 of Marauders? Are we going to see a wave 2 of Marauders, or is this right? Did they really only refresh 2 units, right? Or even thinking about going into edition 2, right? Like, is it going to be the Warriors of Chaos, or is it start going to become more the Marauder army, right? And is this their way to eventually slowly take us towards no, AOS is doing their thing over there, right? And then in the old world, we're doing our thing over here. And are they slowly taking us more towards the old world, how they're imagining chaos will be reimagined in the future? Or are they trying to make Marauders its totally separate thing? So there's a Warriors of Chaos army book, and then there's a Marauder army book. I don't know. What do you think, Evan?
Well, I do think there's an open question, right? Which is, how many armies should there be? And a big question that I have in my mind, and I think a lot of people have had, is when are we getting Norsca, the faction that's going to be totally separate from Warriors of Chaos, and it's just Norsca? And they would have like things like War Mammoths, for example. Do we need that? With the Armies of Infamy and how they focus your attention to certain areas. Mammoth,
that's for sure.
Well, yeah, but you can have these units, right? It's don't get distracted by the concept of just because the unit exists in Total War or something that we won't get it as a model on the tabletop. But how do you represent that? Do you represent that these are members of the Warriors Chaos faction? Have we ever seen you buy a box of models and it's actually for multiple factions? Not really. The Armies of Infamy have been great ways to represent the more individual flavors that you might want to go for, right?
Yeah.
But what a lot of people were expecting and then did not get was, okay, where's my Khorne Army of Infamy or my Nurgle
Hmm.
Army of Infamy? Well,
And they're
in
just not doing
part,
that.
that might not make sense to do yet for the lore, because maybe it doesn't make sense to have a bunch of Khorne, Mark of Khorne worshippers that are teaming up with, demons of Khorne and bloodthirsters and stuff, because that's more of like an end times slash, like Great War Gets Chaos type of a warband that might show up. Whereas right now we're more in this like Marauders coming across the sea as Vikings type of deal, which is a very different
Hmm.
aesthetic.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to find out. And again, this might be edition one thing, or this might be, leading the way into edition two. We just don't know yet. It's a little too early to tell, but it's pretty exciting what they're doing and such. And will in edition two we get straight army books again, or will they continue like this, amalgamation, and then they'll keep doing the arcane journals? We don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
both. But wow, look at that transfer sheet, Evan. How cool is that?
Yeah, and it's a lot of great unique designs here, because it's not just okay, some symbology for Nurgle, some symbology for Tzeentch. We've got this like the crow, right, and the serpent, and
Hmm.
and the raptor is what they called it, and
Raptor.
and the hound.
Hmm.
So way more animist, way more kind of aesthetic here. We still have some runes as well, so I really think you could do some great stuff with these banners. One of the
Love
things
the
that I've
runes.
really liked with my Beastmen is doing like I paint my banners kind of yellow because my whole army's kind of that like yellowy vibe. But I really like having those black transfers over the yellow banner. It looks amazing. I really like black and yellow
Hmm.
as a mix.
Oh yeah, oh, no, I love these. And before I didn't like the old transfers, but and honestly, using the transfers with water was so painful. But the newer transfers are so much better, and you have that, I forget what that's called, that one two step
Microset,
transfer.
microsol. Yeah,
Mike,
people don't
thank you.
know.
That stuff is amazing,
Yeah.
and ever since the new transfer, that stuff I love. I hated doing it before. I never did it because it was so painful, and they would tear and they would rip and it would never work. But with the micro stuff, it's incredible. I love putting those things. So being able to, I want to get my hands on as I can.
Yeah. So if people don't know, like for like $10 on Amazon, you can order a little set of Microset and Microsol. It comes in two bottles. What you do is the red one is Microset, and then you basically you put your transfer in water, you soak it for like 1 minute. That's about all it takes. You can then push with a brush off of the sheet onto a banner, for example, and make sure it's in the right spot. Then you brush on a little bit of Microset, that's the red one, and just leave it there for an hour, right? An hour later, you just brush on a little microsol, and then it's good. That's it. That's all I got to
I
do.
don't even use water at all. I just literally dab it with a brush, the
Yeah,
micro set on top of the
yeah, you
transfer
can
I
do that
want.
too.
I cut it out first, and so it's just by itself. And then I just let it soak, and once it's fully soaked in, you keep moving it with a brush. Anyway, it's amazing. So I
Yeah.
love the new transfers. But we didn't just get new models, did we?
Yes, there's gonna be a new arcane journal. And as people may not have heard about, is they've actually redoing the stat block for the Marauder unit, and for first and foremost, they're gonna be on 30 millimeter bases. That's interesting. You
Yeah.
really would
Now
have
they say
thought.
redoing the stat block, people get confused because when I read redoing the stat block, or the way you first read it when you interpret that, oh, they're redoing their stat profile in terms of toughness, strength, or something like that. It doesn't actually sound like, from reading the article, they're actually changing their raw stats. They're changing their equipment and their weapon options, which is still very cool. But not, they're not making them toughness four. No.
Yeah, we'll get into it because there's a lot of, but I think there's more customization options. Whereas just a flat
Mhm.
stat buff would have been something that people might have immediately thought of. Especially because I was thinking toughness three guys on 30 millimeter bases are kind of weird. Especially because I already don't see a lot of like regular orc boys who are toughness four, because it's just a 30 millimeter base is just a really big block to take up. If you wanted 30 orcs, they're going to be on a thing like the size of an A4 sheet of paper.
I don't know that it's necessarily the size. I mean, you're not wrong. They take up more space. That is a disadvantage in some ways. It's an advantage in
Yeah,
other
there's
ways.
that.
I think honestly, the reason why I don't have a bunch of orcs is I just want new models. Like the second they refresh the orc model range, I'm going to buy a ton of those things. I'm just not a fan of the old models. So I think, and also it's just hard to take orcs when there's night goblins with fanatics, right? They're just so much better. So I think
Well,
that's the reason why we don't see them.
and then we got another great advantage here is that Friedel, who's on a 30 millimeter base as an infantry model, couldn't really fit in Marauders, and her whole army that she was trying to lead was supposed to be Marauders that were ambushing, and it was like,
So weird.
well, and especially since she was heavy infantry, so she couldn't join, like let's say the berserker band that was like frenzied and
Hmm.
stuff. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, but then how do we bring her to the battlefield and get her to like join with the unit? Well, now if they're the same base size, you really have a way easier way to do that, which is convenient as
Way
well.
easier. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is so good, so nice. Can't wait to fry it all in a big block of these 30 Marauders, something like that. Yeah, it's going to be a big unit, but it's like, come get some.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I definitely think that that's an interesting place to go. Having that ability to do the parry save gives you still a way to get a pretty decent armor save on these kind of guys. And Marauders start way lower in the points cost than the Warriors of Chaos. I know that some people play the Warriors of Chaos block, and you're like, oh my god, 15 points each for each of these dudes is so many. And I think it really is this thing where under the game's logic, if you just get a little bit of stat here, a little bit of stat there, you keep adding +1 point per model for getting +1 initiative, and then +1 point per model for having another point of leadership. But then the models are suddenly 15 points each, and it's like, I could just have 3 Marauders instead of this 1 Warrior Chaos. Why am I doing this, right? And that's the logic doesn't quite hold up. It's really good if the things are really close together and you just add a few points here or there. But once they become twice as many points as the other guy, then it becomes a big, one is going to be good, the other one's going to be bad. That's just how it works. Like, because it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
So they're covering the story here. Friedal's covered out a significant fiefdom in the lands here, and just so you know, it's been mentioned in several arcane journals that when she's invading these territory, it's starting to become corrupted. Like the Shadowlands are spreading, so the influence of chaos is being felt physically. Not just that they're killing all the peasants, but they're also converting the empire literally into like an evil place.
Yeah, go Friedal doing her thing.
So there's new rules inspired by these events. So Paths to Glory campaign, I think this is what a lot of people have been hoping for a while, which is something like a crusade type rules, where like over time you can get
It sounds like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
What we don't know is whether what we don't know is whether this is only for Warriors of Chaos, because we know Warriors of Chaos really have that like trying to seek the glory of the Chaos Gods type thing, right?
Hard to say. We don't know until we get our hands on the book, but we're really hoping that, and even if it is to begin with, hopefully this is something that will be expanded with other rules, maybe in other arcane journals, because this is something that we've started to make our own versions for our own narrative events. So it'd be amazing if GW started releasing additional rules for that in arcane journals going forward, so we could start using that for our events. That would be so cool.
Yeah, and so they're talking about slow grow campaigns. Now, what the vast majority of people engage with some kind of a narrative event is this, like, I'm going to play a couple games over the period of several weeks. And the big problem with that is, like, people have varying amounts of interest. It's hard to get, physically to meet up with people over time. Different things come up. So we've have this thing we're going to be testing out in 7 days from now. Hey, can we get everyone in the room on one day and just play what should kind of feel like a narrative event over a single day? Is that going to happen? And what a lot of people have suggested is, hey, can I start with a small army and add to it over time? I don't know. I mean, in a single day event, is that going to work? I'm not sure.
We'll find out.
Yeah. And it's talking about here that this book is supposed to be kind of a guide for how you might do something like that, and start with a small army and then grow to bigger ones. We see a mix of the old and the new models here, which is really cool. Got the skin wolves in the back. But I do think the Marauders, just having those big blocks of the Marauders and the Cav particularly, and the center of your army could really give you the old world, vibe, as opposed to, kind of that like AOS more kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's definitely feeling more old world to see big bricks of infantry, big bricks of cavalry. Having the lower points cost than the Chaos Knights or Chaos Warriors definitely allows you to field more of them, which is great. So the question is it enough though, right? I love these models. I love that Wolves of the Sea list, but I'm curious what else the book is going to give us.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. It says for developing characters in units as they survive battles and earn veteran status. That's interesting. I very much look forward to looking through that. I mean, I don't know whether we can adapt that. I mean, we have done slow grow campaigns in the past, right, where people might be using something like that, so that'd be great.
Definitely, yeah.
And then they've mentioned they're updating the Chaos Marauder and Horseman profiles. Now, I mean, obviously there's a lot of contention around this, which means everyone who's got the old ones, you're going to have to switch over to using a new rule set, right, including a new base size. I don't think people are going to be that upset about that idea. But it also opens the door to...
I think it depends on the individual. I mean, no one's going to complain about new stats and new things. It's the base size change. And to be fair, I get it. I think a lot of people did similar things to what I did. Is the Dark Oath models came out for AOS and they are great, and they bought a whole bunch of those, which I did, and they based them and on the 25 millimeter base, and now they're like, dang it, I just did that, now I have to rebase them. Now I haven't painted those yet because I'm painting my orcs and goblins right now, so I'm like, okay, no problem, just boop boop boop, put them on the 30 millimeter base instead. That being said, I really want these other new models, but I love the idea of mixing and matching. I love the idea like the skirmish. I could use the Dark Oath ones for like the skirmishing unit, right? Whereas I could use these heavier guys for the rank and file. I think they're going to look amazing together. So I know there are a lot of other people out there who are excited as I am, and some people are like, "Dang it, I just painted up and based and because they finished painting the models, all those Dark Oath Marauders." So I get it; they're frustrated, but I think this is not going to be the last time that this happens over the next few years as they continue to reboot and continue to refresh the old world, right? So I don't know what's next, but I don't think this is the last one.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that people will be very much welcoming a refresh to something like High Elf Spearman, especially if there's some kind of rules changes there. It would be great.
Yeah,
and
I think
I know
other
a lot
things
of people.
too.
I have like 70 of those High Elf Spearmen. I have so many.
I mean, this is no different though than what they did for 40K and rebooting all the ranges there with the Space Marines, and they did it over a long period of time, and they did it very well. But I think again, the base ranges. I think the biggest thing here is basing. I think this is just the start, especially on Edition 2. Quite frankly, I do not appreciate all the old dragon models that are on all the old tiny bases.
Yeah,
As far as I'm
the
concerned,
dragon
if you're a
bases are way
dragon,
too
if you're a
small.
behemoth, you should be on 100 by 150. It
Yeah.
just plays much better. So that's just one example. There are many others. So I do believe between now and Edition 2, there will be more base changes. Again, this was a beta test. Now they're like, oh, this is legit going to be the fourth pillar of the company. Like, this is making a ton of money. This is super popular. We're going to keep expanding this. That means, okay, next edition, they really need to go back and they're going to have to slowly phase out the legacy, the tiny little bloodthirster on the tiny little demon prince base, and they're going to have to start updating them to the modern 32 millimeter scale and the modern base size range. This is going to keep happening, and it's going to frustrate people who have had their armies for a long time, but they're either continue to get the if you don't want to rebase them, then get the extenders, right? Get the spacers, right? People have already been doing that, so
Yeah.
this is going to keep happening.
So what they're mentioning here is that the Chaos Marauders don't have the mark of Chaos. They just have mark of Chaos undivided. That does mean you can be joined by any character you want, which is cool. But Marauders instead belong to one of 4 Chaos cults: Bloody Hound, Carrion Crow, Slithering Serpent, Fell Raptor. And these are going to have their own significant thematic bonus that's like a one-use during like for a single round. So instead of it being like you have Frenzy for the entire game, if you're Mark of Corn, for example, if you are following the Bloody Hound, you might have a single turn where you get to do something that's extra damage in combat, kind of thing.
That's actually pretty cool. If you get to choose when to activate it. I don't know if it just is it like first charge, or it's just the first time you charge it just happens. So that's not as it's still good, but you still know when it will happen. But it's not necessarily when you want it to happen. But if it only happens once per game, well, often you only need it to happen once at the right moment. I hope that means they're cheaper, because once you start having those bricks of 30 guys and you start spending even 1 point or 2 points per mark per model, it adds up real quick. So if it's not on the whole game and it's only activated once, I'm hoping we get a discount.
Yeah. I definitely don't already know the answer to that, but sometimes, and we have seen in the past, High Elf Spearmen, they don't pay 1 point per model to get Shield Wall. It's plus 10 points per unit. Just the whole unit can get it for 10 points. So I
love that, because it encourages you to take bigger units, right? You actually get a discount for taking more models. And that's what we want in Old World. We want bigger units, right?
Yeah, definitely. So that's not all, though. Okay, there's also rules for chaotic traits, and these are upgrades to be purchased for characters and units in the new book, and there are different kinds of corruptions. So this is interesting. So not just are you going to have like marked units, and again, the marked units can buy these as well, but also the Marauders could also have some of these upgrades, and you could have your whole army be kind of warped in a specific way. I think certain units will have a certain limit, like Marauders usually is like a limit of 1 of these, and then the Word Chaos get like 2, something like that.
Okay.
And in different cases, it's like having better toughness or increased charge ranges or magic resistance, stuff like that. So those are like upgrades for your whole unit. And some of these are also in that like plus 10, 20 points per unit instead of per model type of situation. Right?
It's powerful. Really
Yeah.
powerful.
So they
It's
literally do
exciting.
say enhanced toughness. So there is some way for you to
Ooh,
give Marauders a better toughness score. Okay?
I
So
love
just so you
that.
know,
I
that is
love,
in there.
yeah, that's super cool.
Now, what's really spicy is can all of those buffs also apply to things like the Marauder Berserker unit from Wolves of the Sea, which is already toughness 4 and has like frenzy and stuff like that? Like, does it apply to them
Don't
too?
know, because they
Yeah.
implied we're going to update your Marauder profiles, but they didn't specify. Does this mean just the Grand Army profiles or also unit entries from the Wolves of the Sea? Don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to when we get the book, we'll find out. There's also a new lore of magic, the lore of Shadowlands. So that's always fun.
Love
I
new
very much
lores.
like. It's funny how the originally book came out and it didn't have the different winds of magic lores like people are used to, and then slowly we've been adding new ones. I think it's actually really ticked up recently because we only had troll magic for the first like year and a half, and then both Wood Elves and Beastmen had their own lore, and then Cathay had a lot of signature spells, and now the Marauders have their own as well. So look, if you want to play Norsca, you have a massively different way to do it now. If you just play with the Marauder Cav and the Marauder Infantry as your core units, and then just pick and choose what you want to throw in there too. I mean, other than having a War Mammoth, what else do you want?
Oh, there's always more. But let's start with the War Mammoth. Maybe in the future. We'll get it someday. I don't know about this edition, but we'll get it maybe edition 2. We'll see.
Very, very cool. Yeah, it says they have a spell that gives reserve move. There's been many of those. I think both the lore of Wood Elves and the lore of Beastmen both have a spell that does that. So now we have of the last 3 lores of Magic that have come out, all 3 of them have a spell that gives the unit reserve move.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
That's interesting to think.
unless they make throwing axes somehow significantly better, there's just, I mean, reserve move primarily is for shooting things.
Well, you know what shoots, Mike? Magic
Not
missiles.
not a lot. Yeah, but I don't think the Marauders are going to be shooting a lot more magic missiles. But maybe I'm wrong. They do have throwing axes, which are cool, but I I
So if you put all your wizards in a
I don't know.
bunker of infantry and you actually want to shoot, they can only walk 4 inches and then fire their
Yeah, I know.
weapons.
Yeah,
So if you don't
yeah.
have
But is
reserve
that
move, you're going to fall behind the rest of your guys who are charging forwards, right? So
so? Is that
that's
spell? Is that there just for the wizards? I'm just hoping there's going to be more use for the ranged weapons that the army does have, which they've had typically throwing javelins or throwing axes, which are cool and thematic, but it just don't often get a chance to use them enough, or just often there's not enough of them to make it meaningful. So we'll just see what happens.
yeah. Well, I think the big thing that I've been doing for the ranged weapons lately is you just try to pick off 1 or 2 guys so that they can't score the objective anymore. And so being able to
Mhm.
have the throwing axes for that can be great, great on these cav. Especially since now apparently you're not going to have Mark of Corn flail Marauder cav because they don't do that anymore. So now if you're not going to have frenzied suicide bombers that you used to have, well maybe they are going to be more of a utility piece that has throwing axes and reserve move and stuff like that, right?
I don't know. You're able to give them to like toughness 5 or something else, or toughness 4. I like. There's so many more potential new ways to use the army now that they add these customization options.
Definitely. Oh, and then I think the last kind of big news here is there's new magic items, but unlike the other arcane journals, these are for everybody other than dwarves and demons. I assume, which is sad for
Probably.
those 2 people. But now there's like a whole new set of common items that everyone can use because these are just artifacts that are found in the Shadowlands. So any kind of, especially like a narrative game, for example, that's taking place in the Shadowlands, that's why people have access to these on both sides.
I love it. It's so cool. It's great that they're expanding that, right? Because that's been one of the challenges. The common magic items. It's great that the list exists, but unfortunately, 3/4 of the common magic items never get taken and they haven't updated them, so they're just not good, and people just don't take them. So they're adding new ones. Hopefully, we're going to see a whole bunch of new ones that people will take. That's exciting.
Well, I will say that I'm very excited. It says Cackling Blade gives you D6 extra attacks. I use that for like the Black Maul for the Beastmen. It's an 80-point weapon, and it's so much fun to use that because you just
Hmm.
love going into combat and seeing. I have no idea how effective I'll be. Let's find out. Oh, great! I have 12 attacks. This is awesome. You never know until you get there, right?
Yeah, except this one you might turn it on yourself, so it might be one of those either it's a test one or if you roll ones you hit yourself. So don't know until we see it.
Yep. Anyway, everyone out there, just stay legendary and get ready for a lot of Marauder. Man, look at these dudes. They look so
They're
angry.
so cool. They're so cool. I need to get 2 of those boxes. They're going to sell out so fast. I love it.
That's the other thing. They did sell out. So they sold out in 5 minutes on the website, and you could not buy them. You cannot buy them right now, Mike. Good luck. It went up for pre-order, and they sold out in 10 minutes.
Yeah, because look at them. They're amazing. They're so cool. They're so cool. Well, that's okay. That will maybe speed up when they release the individual boxes as well, because we're going to get those soon. I love it. All right. Anything else, Evan, or did we go through all the updates that they've given us so far?
No, that's it. When we get the Arcane Journal, we'll share it with you guys.
All right. Then we'll see you next time.